Hello and welcome to Dreams About My Brother. For those who don't know, my brother recently passed away in 2019 on August 3rd at 2:30 p.m. on a Saturday. And ever since his death, I've been receiving dreams with my brother in them, and some of them have been very encouraging, but also they've been sharing a certain phenomenon of something called synchronicity. Now, for those who don't know what synchronicity is, it is the occasional connection of two or more psychic and physical phenomena. For example, the one that's usually the most famous one is the Carl Jung Golden Scarab story, if you don't know, it is basically Carl Jung was in session with a patient, and the patient was talking about a golden scarab she received, and during the session, a real bug hit against Carl Jung's cabinet window. So Carl went to the cabinet, got the bug, and it turned out to be a golden scarab. So yes, I'm going to be talking about a lot about that. So, and also the fact that in these dreams too, my example of the synchronicity is my first one where I'm jogging with my brother and we end up in a bedroom somewhere and we are hugging. You know, he's telling me he loves me, he misses me, and he's sorry. And the dream ends. And I told my friend M about this, his recent girlfriend at the time, and she had a similar event happen to her. Her dream started out in the bedroom and it ended in the bedroom, but the dream ended with me and my brother hugging each other. Me and my brother were hugging each other and telling how much we love each other and that he's sorry. So it is a little bit of a weird situation there, and a little bit of a weird phenomenon that happened, because it's just too plain to see the connection there. It's like, was that synchronicity at work? Was that the psyche moving in there? I do want to talk a lot more about more topics on this, but for right now, I just want to talk about the dream and what happened during the dream. So, one thing I want to say though is there's a lot of things and definitions I'm going to be saying. I'm going to be talking about. In fact, I'm going to recommend going to a different video. I might link it down below. Max Sterritt's video on Jacob's Ladder, Silent Hill, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Because most importantly, the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about the three bardos and the universal mind. And Jacob's Ladder, well, if you haven't seen that movie, there is a twist at the end, but the twist makes sense for what the contents of the story is. So, let's get into it, shall we? For starters, I would just want to say that I'm going to give you some context on what the situation was before the dream or after the dream and stuff like that, I'm going to give you contents before the dream so you can understand what the situation was at the time. Back in 2019, I was living in an apartment down on the outskirts of Philadelphia. It was still Philadelphia, but it was like the nice suburb areas, and me and my brother were living in a nice apartment, and after his death, I was told I couldn't live there anymore, and I was told that I was told to get out of the apartment, and I couldn't live there. So I moved into a different spot that was closer in the neighboring township, but it wasn't far enough for me to not walk towards my parents' house. So, yeah, and the reason why I didn't want to live near my parents or live next to them, there was some real bad tension there. So I figured I didn't need to be there at the time. However, so anyway, context goes, that's it. And also when I refer to my home, I'm talking about this place and not the apartment. So what I will call an apartment, I'll call the apartment, but this is my home. So anytime I reference my home, so the dream. So the dream begins. I'm riding my bike, which usually doesn't happen because I usually walk there. Riding my bike to my parents' house. I first cut through a park. Getting there, the park seems dark and a bit confusing at times, and I don't know where I'm usually going. So I get out of the park, I go home, and lo and behold, my parents are not home. They're somewhere else, and I'm trying to figure out where they are. Apparently, they were on the street next over, and they were in a parking lot, a small parking lot, outside of a chiropractor's office, and my mom and dad and several other people were drinking and partying, having a good time, like there was a block party. And I went up to my mom and dad and asked them what was going on. Apparently, everything decided to go dark, pitch black, dark. Now, the first thing that really came to mind wasn't the movie with Vin Diesel. It was the game Silent Hill. And for those who've never played Silent Hill, there are parts in the game where the town itself goes from a light gray, light world, to a pitch black void. And within this void, there was nothing. There was no light, absolutely nothing. No light from the city, no light from the stars or the sun. No light from the stars or the moon or anything. There was nothing there. And so luckily, for some apparent reason, I had a light on my bike, and I decided to lead my mom and dad back to the house here. And as I was not really riding, but pedal walking my way back home with my mom and dad intact, I noticed behind me that other people were following me, people that I knew, and just were confused by this situation, but not scared. But they were just really wondering where'd any of the light go and why it went completely dark all of a sudden. So I get home and I immediately go upstairs, but before I go any further, I see my brother. It looked like he was getting ready to go out. I mean, he had a towel wrapped around him, pants over his shoulder, shoes in one hand, phone in the other, and he was talking to somebody. And I looked at him and I'm like, and again, it frustrated me because it felt like he was there. It felt like he was real, and it felt like I knew he was alive again. I was like, okay, this was all a nightmare. But I knew it wasn't the truth because this happened to me a couple of times. So it was like, okay, what is this? What are you trying to say here, John? And I got frustrated. And I asked him, John, are you alive or are you dead? And well, no, that's not what I asked him. I asked him, John, what's going on? Are you alive or are you dead? And he just gave me this look like he was confused. Like, wait a minute, what did you just ask me? Like, kind of that look, you know what I mean? And I was kind of shocked by the look, and I just woke up after that, and I was kind of shocked by it. It was kind of surprising, and I was worried because did my brother know, was he dead? Did he know he wasn't alive anymore? And granted, that's happened in a lot of movies and television shows where a character will be walking around and wondering why strange things are happening to him, and apparently finds out he's dead. It happened in Sixth Sense, it happened in other movies and television shows. The Others is a great example too. But another example that came up in my mind was Jacob's Ladder. Now, before I get into that, I should tell you how the dream ends. How the story ends. It's basically, that day I walked over to my parents' house to collect something, and it was weird because, well, granted, I did this to myself, but it was a gray, overcast day, and I decided to play the Silent Hill soundtrack as I was walking home. The more calm ambient stuff and not My Heaven. So, anyhow, walking home, I noticed a few things. One of them was a pack of Newport cigarettes, and it's weird because that's the cigarette my brother usually smokes. So usually that's like his indicator of like, okay, you need to go here, you need to go down this path. And I do want to talk about two things though within this dream. I want to talk about the synchronicity of my brother's reaction and the message of the dream. But first, I want to talk about my brother's reaction to not knowing if he was dead. And this comes from the video from Max Darrett called Synchronicity. Not Synchronicity, what's the video? Silent Hill, Jacob's Ladder, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which basically most of the two references I'm going to reference are Jacob's Ladder and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but I am going to throw some Silent Hill-esque stuff in there for you. So, the contents that it has that are very interesting are the Universal Mind and the Three Bardos. Now, but I could talk. The Universal Mind is basically the collective unconscious of the human race and everything living in the universe. You know, our thoughts, our feelings, our sharings, the archetypes of characters that we know. You know, we all have a mother archetype. We all have a father archetype. We all have, in that sense, a certain character that we know. But the more interesting thing I want to talk about is the three bardos, 3 stages of death as it's presented to me. The first one is the happenings of death. The second one is the psychic journey of one's soul dealing with karmic illusions, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And the third one is the rebirth or the entrance into nirvana. For those who've never seen the movie Jacob's Ladder or played Silent Hill 2, well, mostly Jacob's Ladder, Jacob Singer basically going through his version of his second stage of the Bardo. Yes, Jacob Singer is dead in that movie, but figuring out and seeing how it gets played out is more interesting than finding out his death. It's an interesting tidbit that happens throughout the movie. Jacob Singer doesn't realize that he is dead. And there's hints and allegations to knowing that he's dead. The palm reading scene and the hospital scene, not knowing that they're dead, but they are given visions by people that help them along that journey. Basically from psychic residues from previous lives. And yes, I am paraphrasing what I've heard and said, and I'm not doing good research on this, but I want to discuss this one part though because it's very interesting to me. Second stage of the Bardo, you don't realize that you're dead. Like the people who are deceased don't realize that they're dead and go through this journey of dealing with the Buddhist deities. Most of them could be the visions of a wise old man, the archetype of that, or the archetype of the mother, or the archetype of a friend, and in the movie Jacob's Ladder, his chiropractor Louis acts like a guardian angel and his best friend. And he talks about a particular scene in the movie where, you know, the demons that he's seeing or thinks he's seeing, tearing apart his life, taking everything away from him, are not really demons. They are angels helping him to remove or let go of the earthly things he's had. Basically trying to accept the things that he's done and accept the things that he couldn't change and helping him move on to the other side. Which is like the whole story of Jacob's Ladder. Throughout the movie, he's trying to convince himself that he's alive, but towards the end of the movie, he's dead. And once he accepts that and accepts, you know, he accepts the things that he cannot hold on to anymore, he moves on. And it's a beautiful ending too. So this goes back to my brother's dream again, because in the dream he doesn't know that he's dead. I don't think he knew that he was dead, and I had to remind him. Basically, I had to meet him in his own Bardo and just come into contact with him. And I think the universe was trying to tell me that yes, even in death, it's kind of like Silent Hill, but without the freaky monsters, because you're not on that journey of the Bardo yet. You haven't died yet. And I guess I was entering that void world, and I had to see my brother and tell him, look, John, you gotta figure it out. Are you alive or dead? And it's fascinating. I mean, granted, I know this could be just like dream coincidences and stuff like that, but to me, I think I did enter a second stage of the Bardo, and I was trying to help, and granted, acting like not a Buddhist deity, but someone from that world to tell him, look, are you alive or dead? You know, to remind him. And luckily, I did get confirmation of his answer, because my friend M, his current girlfriend at the time, had a very similar dream happen to her. In her dream, she's living in a house with Jonathan, and towards the end of the dream, he kisses Megan and tells her he has to go to work, and before he leaves out the door, he stops and realizes he couldn't because he's dead. Now, this is kind of sad, but it's also kind of rewarding to hear, because I think he's finally accepted that stage of the Bardo where he can finally move on and accept his death. And I'm so glad about that. I'm sorry, Megan, I'm sorry, Em, that you had to experience that, but know this, that he is gone through the second stage of the Bardo and accepting his own death. I know this all sounds strange to hear and stuff like that, but it's kind of rewarding to hear. Now, for the message of the dream, I believe something big was coming when I saw that, because Silent Hill's Dark World usually ends up having monsters or some kind of horrific entity to come along with it. It's like the second stage of entering hell in the Silent Hill universe. So there's the fog world, which is just the conscious, the dark world, which is just the unconscious, and then the hell world, which is just basically like the karmic illusions becoming more real. And granted, like the karmic illusions in Silent Hill are not illusions; they're real threats, but they manifest from the unconscious to attack you. And so I believe my brother was telling me that I had to come home. I had to come home and protect my mom and dad and help them out in this dark time, which is basically what it is. So yeah, after that dream, a few months passed, and a couple of months passed, and in February I moved out and moved back in with my mom and dad. But at the end of March, guess what happened? And you all know the answer to this one. Corona broke out. So I like to think that my brother was warning me about something, or the universe was warning me about something, and they were using Silent Hill as like a message, like, hey, there's some darkness that's gonna come and basically cause havoc, and you gotta come back home and defend your home. So, coming back home and finding out there's a biological weapon out there, I had two. So this involves two survival horror games: Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Hell, if we had a mitochondria attack, we could make this into a three-way with Parasite Eve, or dinosaurs with Dino Crisis. Again, I'm not saying this was real or anything like that. This is just me explaining something that happened to me, a dream state that happened to me that I'm just trying to figure out, and just break down and kind of give you an analytical view of what this dream meant to me and what this vision was. And it was very interesting to see some things come to life and see some things happen. And to be honest with you, I'm going to still do more. The second one's not going to be as convoluted or as not as shoddy put together. Let me put that way. So the one thing I will start to try to do is make better video content, especially featuring this topic right here, because the second one, the next stream that came up, is kind of a funny one, because it has my brother's sense of humor in it. So I'll see you guys in the next video.